Hello, everybody, and welcome back to SEC Roundup. My name is Nick Morgan. I'm one of the co-founders of ICANN, Investor Choice Advocates Network, and one of the co-hosts of today's episode. Joining me, as always, as co-host is Tom Zaccaro. Tom, good morning.
Good morning, Nick.
And the reason for our podcast today is that we are joined by Professor Gabriel Voelcker from the Tuck School of Business at Dartmouth and Professor Gabriel Pündrich from the Warrington College of Business at the University of Florida. You all both will first of all, thank you for joining.
Our pleasure. Thank you for having us.
Thank you.
You are co-authors of a groundbreaking new paper, Constituent Interests in SEC Rules, Evidence from Voluntary Comment Letters. And without shortchanging the methodology and the results of your paper, I can summarize it by saying that you used large language models to analyze over 65,000 public comment letters. And the paper is the result of your analysis. And as the audience will know, ICANN is a participant in the rulemaking process in a number of ways. We have petitioned for rulemaking, we have commented on rules, and on occasion we have joined in lawsuits challenging rules promulgated by the commission. So we found your results and analysis particularly relevant to what we do. So Tom, I know you've looked at the paper and looked at the methodology and the results. Why don't you give our guests, the two Gabriels, a couple of questions?
Absolutely. And professors, it's nice to have this opportunity to speak about this very fascinating article you've written. And I'll just lay the groundwork of the article and let you guys jump in and explain the significance of your findings. But as I understand from the article, you looked at over 30 years of the SEC's rulemaking process. And, for our audience, SEC rulemaking is subject to the Administrative Procedures Act, which requires the SEC to give notice of any proposed rule and to solicit comments from interested people. And professors, you looked at 30 years worth of rulemaking, looked at proposed rules, and looked at comment letters and tried to evaluate the impact of those comment letters on the ultimate rule that either was adopted or not adopted by the SEC. And just to put a little bit more a sharper point on it, and then I'll let you guys describe your findings. You broke the commentators, people submitting comment letters, into 4 categories. It's firms, right, which would be corporations and corporate representatives as the first. Second would be sophisticated investors, hedge funds, mutual funds, other asset managers. Third would be experts like lawyers, auditors, academics, former SEC commissioners who often comment on rules. And then the final group would be the mom and pop retail investors. And I think that a residual category for anyone who didn't fit into those 4 specific categories. So assuming I characterized the framework of the article, please describe your conclusions as to the impact each group had at various stages in the rulemaking process.
So, Gabe, you want to take this or shall I?
Yeah, you can go for that.
Okay, you add to, if I miss anything, you just let me know. So, first of all, thank you again for having us. It's a pleasure to be here talking about our work. We've been working on this for almost 2 years now, a little under 2 years actually. And this paper is the first paper that we know of that is able to actually use all of that data. Prior work in this space, it focused on a subset of rules, subset of letter writers, but never an analysis has been done as comprehensive as ours. And that's only possible now because we have LLMs that allows us to process all that data, organize the letter writers into the groups you've just correctly described. And so if we were to write this 5 years ago, 10 years ago, we would need an army of research assistants to go over all of that material, which gladly this time we didn't need. Okay. So what Gabe, Chuck, and I did, and Chuck's not here because he's getting married tomorrow, so he sends his regards. What we did was we obtained all of that data from the SEC rulemaking website, And with all of the data in our hands, we were thinking, okay, how do we organize this? How can we extract the most valuable insights from this? And to guide our analysis, and the reason we organized into these four groups is because we looked into the SEC's mission. And the SEC's mission is to protect investors, ensure that markets are fair, transparent, efficient, and foment capital formation. So when you talk about protecting investors, we're talking about the retail investors and also the sophisticated investors. When we talk about efficiency and transparency of markets, we think about, experts who have some experience in this topic, maybe through comment letters are able to convey some insights that can guide the rulemaking process. And when it comes to fomenting capital formation, we naturally thought of first. So these are the four groups that we analyzed that are other types of letter writers, which in very academic terms, we call our control group. All the results that we have on the paper, we compare to them. And I think that Gabe did this more than I do. I think he can talk about how did we map each letter and each writer's view to what's being ruled. So Gabe, if you want to take over. Sorry for the cold call.
No, no worries. So, yeah, this paper definitely benefits from advancements on large language models. And without that, it would be nearly impossible to do that. So the way to classify, so it's important to know that we use large language models here in a way that it's to classify. So there's no creativity or hallucination, therefore. So we are able to set like hallucination is equal to 0 and just classify. So it does a very good job on that. We also did like manual checks to make sure that it was doing a good job. And it did incredibly well in classifying, understanding what each type of the letters to map the rules that were answering those letters, which is a massive job, and also to understand what kind of person was writing those letters. So we didn't know before we opened this box. We didn't know how much people tell about themselves in the letter, so we're able to have more information to classify them. So here in your case, for example, we've seen that Nick wrote about like 8 to 9 letters. If is that right? If I mean,
Sounds about right. Yep.
and so this was all, but then your letters have header, has the ICANN logo, so the AI uses all that to understand, okay, these guys, they do advocacy for smaller investors. So we were able to classify anyone who would write in the name of ICANN, and also classify that as a small investor sort of advocacy. So all this work was a big data sort of challenge, and allow us to give the first insight to understand what is inside of the rulemaking process, which is a black box until now.
Gabriel, can I interrupt you for a second? Because you've had the opportunity of looking through some of these comment letters, as have I. And some of the ones that I assume are from retail investors can be pretty short and kind of funny sometimes. Like,
Yeah.
this is the dumbest rule ever, or, this, yeah. So I can imagine it's difficult to, I mean, you can sort of infer if it's a one sentence, it's probably not an advocacy group or an industry group. So it sounds like you had to go through that process of kind of have a combination of you and the LLM model assess what is this commenter likely to be. So
because we have a level of confidence as well. So if the confidence is very low, we claim to be anonymous or unable to classify it. So that's a very good heterogeneous control group.
One thing that I think that it's worth mentioning, Nick, is that as you both probably know, within proposed rules, you have requests for comments, which are very direct questions that the SEC asks to the general public. And we did our analysis on that level, right? So we extracted all the questions from the 417 rules we have in our analysis, and we mapped those questions to the answers provided in the comment letters. So if you write a one sentence comment letter saying, I don't like this.
Yeah.
I mean, that will at most be matched to say, do you have any general comments regarding this letter?
mm-hmm.
But it's a teeny tiny fraction of everything that we do. But there are other answers, and we have a lot of variation in the content there, but there are a lot of answers that specifically address, say, a certain question, saying, I think that this should be done this way or that way. I disagree with this. This is my criticism. This is my suggestion. So we did the analysis on that level. We have 417 letters, but we have 400,000 almost answers that we're able to match between the proposal the answer and what gets adopted or dropped. That's around a quarter or a fifth of our rules in our sample do not get adopted. Okay. So, and what we do in our analysis, this was a very long answer, sorry, to your question, but this is a very long way of saying that having done all this, what we do is we match the answers to these requests for comments and see, depending on the identity of the writer, based on the 4 groups we just discussed, if some groups are systematically having their preferences, as stated in their answers, reflected both at the proposal, adoption, or drop scenarios of the rulemaking process. And in a nutshell, we find that at the proposal and the adoption levels, firms are more likely to have their interests reflected in the rules versus the average commenter. The effect is stronger at the proposal level. Something happens during the whole rulemaking process that the adoption level, that effect is still there, but slightly weaker. And for the rules that do get dropped, retail investors appear to be happy. Their interests are reflected in the decision to drop a rule.
Yeah.
Do you think that's because the commission is being responsive to retail investors, or why do you think that is?
So, Gabe, feel free to correct me, okay? But my interpretation of what we have, and this is not yet a published paper, this is something we're still working on and submitting to academic journals. So my interpretation is that, I mean, in academia, we have this it's very delicate for us to claim any causality anywhere, right? We have to be very thorough and really identify the things that we're saying. So I think that comment letters is a huge part of the rulemaking process, but it's not all. They also, as you know, the SEC hosts meetings with some of the constituents. You have off-channel communications, you have donations, you have things going on before the rule gets proposed, you have petitions. So there's a lot of, social media pressure. There are a lot of forces at play here. We are not here to claim causality. We are, since this is the first study to comprehensively study comment letters, we are gathering evidence, descriptive evidence of what's going on. What I can tell you for sure is, based on the interest as reflected on their answers, on their comment letters, firms are happy with what gets proposed and what gets adopted. And retail investors are happy with what gets dropped. On average.
Yeah. Yeah. And I guess your point is correlation is not causation. So, but if you're seeing it over and over and over again, you get, and I want to don't put you on the spot, but this goes to Tom's question. You get closer to lay people, certainly. We get closer to concluding that, in fact, retail investors' comment letters may cause the commission to drop certain portions of rulemaking. You're not going that far in your paper, but for Tom and me looking at this from the outside, it sort of looks like that. So.
Yeah, one of the things we are raising the question here demonstrated as we need to know and to understand more. And we talked to some SEC staff that worked on the rulemaking process, reading those letters, and we know that they read the letters. We know they classify. We know that the letters are not dismissed like, oh, this is a retail investor, who cares? But I think one of the interpretations we give, and again, Gabe, correct me if I'm not expressing myself properly, is that we're not claiming that SEC is favoring a group or another, but there is a whole system on how rules, how governmental bodies, agencies work. If Nick and Thomas, you probably definitely know much better than us because you have professional experience in this, but giving the whole system, the whole lobbying or whole connections, whole resources available, lawyers supporting you, everything. As it happens a lot, if it happens before the proposal is even issued to public, maybe the SEC cannot even do much because that's what they have available.
Yeah.
But that's just a if.
Right.
And then what we can see, which is nice, which we're happy to see, is that during once the proposal is available and the rule and the letters are out there, we can see that the distance between what is favorable to companies and investors, this gap reduces. And reduces on the sense that some rules, some requests for some comments are actually dropped, and they are dropped aligning to what the retail investors are suggesting. So actually, this could be seen also from a more skeptical way, like, come on, there's one group being more favored than the other. But we see more in the sense that given all the system, how things work in society, or even beyond, like, why do we even study? But still, there is a balance afterwards, and that's really great to see. And one of the things is that you cannot sometimes, if you change the proposal too much, the proposal has to be redone, and there's a high cost on that. So probably the SEC cannot just like, there's a lot of satisfaction with this. We cannot just go back to the drawing board. We're gonna just drop everything and be all resources wasted.
Yeah.
So they shape the way they can that.
Right.
And that's the way we see. But again, we are describing and trying to understand I think there's a lot more to be understood in this process.
I have a suggestion for another place to look. So your point about institutions having more probably exclusive impact on the proposal stage, that makes intuitive sense. Retail investors are not going to walk down the street to the SEC and ask them to propose a rule, or they catch wind of a rule. They're not going to. There's no avenue for them really to participate. But there is one way, which is to petition for rulemaking. And that somebody did an analysis of the petitions for rulemaking and the percentage of those petitions that were actually taken up by the commission. And that is a way that the public can ask the SEC at the proposal stage to create a rule. It would be interesting to know more about why and how those proposed rules do or don't get acted upon, because that does seem to me to be a way that the general public could and actually does get involved at the proposal stage. So
that's a great point. Thank you.
Yeah, right. I'm full of suggestions, so we got many more.
We should interview you here and ask you.
So the value of looking at over 30 years of data is that over the past 30 years, we've had so many different chair people, right, at both ends of the spectrum. And we've had presidential administrations at various places on the spectrum, but none like the current administration, and no SEC that has been so, or at least talked about being so aggressively anti-rulemaking. Do you see any change in your conclusions under the current Chairman Atkins? I think your data went through 2024, so it doesn't pick up, right, the current administration. Would you think it'll change under Atkins, or will there be no rules because they don't want to make any new rules?
Well, careful, Tom. There are 3 proposed rules out right now that we're going to comment on. So it's not no rules, but I get your point. Fewer rules.
Gabe, if you allow me, just make a quick comment here. I was watching a podcast that Nick was being interviewed, and the interviewer asked if there was any change during administrations, and Nick said, "Well, the staff usually don't change." So even the commentators say, "Yeah, it's like a deep state thing." It's like, "Oh, it's like another someone." But I think you recall this, Nick.
Yeah.
We actually tried to test some variation on the chair, and then when you saw that, I even comment with Gabe, like, look, we look at the chair and didn't find any difference, empirical difference throughout time. So it corroborates what you were saying exactly. So we didn't feel easy, and we weren't a bit uneasy with that, because it's like, how come there's and we heard this comment a few times. There's any difference throughout governments, and we didn't find anything yet. Maybe the way you look, maybe
Right.
It's very hard to find something. Gabe, sorry, that's something.
And that might be partly the case because the members of the commission change, the staff typically does not. So you have staff members in Corp-Fin, for example, who may have been there for all of the different chair for that are covered in your survey. But I think that also has changed with everything that occurred in early 2025 and the large departures that have occurred throughout the commission. So I don't expect you guys to have a crystal ball. I don't think anyone knows what's going to happen, but I would be interested in having this conversation, 4 years from now, and telling us what happened under the Atkins chairmanship.
Yeah. Sophie, we noticed that the rule that was just dropped now about the environmental disclosures,
Right.
we never seen anything like that. That was an outlier. In terms of number of letters or type of letters, there were people like some advocacy, I think was another advocacy for smaller investors, and they had 600 pages.
Wow.
Something like that was ridiculous.
We got to get to work in. We're laggards. We need to crank out some more stuff. It's interesting. I was just thinking about your question that even in a sort of deregulatory administration, if you want to rescind old rules, the way you do it, and this comes up with the climate disclosure rule, is that you have to promulgate a rule. So even in a deregulatory climate where, say, Chair Atkins was inclined to withdraw old rules or change old rules, you do it through rulemaking, which would be subject to the same notice and comment process. So I think the Gabriel analysis, you'd still have material data to work with there, because I think early indications are on that climate disclosure rule, the rescission of that rule will also be challenged in court. So it's additional rulemaking that occurs. So.
I think that this discussion speaks to the richness of data. There's so much we can work with. You both just gave us 2 research ideas that we can transform in a paper in the future. So sorry. No, we appreciate that. The more ideas, the better. But what we can tell is from this paper, I would say we don't want to speculate and comment on something that is outside the scope. That's like Gabe shared on things that we tried, but we decided to focus on the identity of the comment letter writers because that's what we have here now. Maybe in the future, we'll have different papers, other papers that look at the very important issues you both raised.
Right.
Yeah. Well, it's fascinating. I really enjoyed reading the article. So thank you for your contributions. And as I said, we'll come back in 4 years after the end of the Atkins administration or the Atkins chairmanship and revisit the issue.
That's right.
So, professors, suppose I'm a corporation that wants to influence a rule. Who should I hire? A lawyer, a former commissioner, an academic? Who do I go to? And if you say lawyer, that's extra points.
I'm assuming you are asking that question because you want the views of your corporation to be reflected in a rule, right? And our answer based on the analysis we've done so far is that this is not just limited to comment letters. Sure, comment letters are important and we know for a fact that they are read. The commission has to read them. We know that, but there are many ways that you can actually influence rulemaking. We definitely encourage you, if comment letter is how you intend to communicate with the SEC, we definitely encourage you to be polite, to put out some very nice, well thought arguments and not just complain about the commission with no suggestions, right? So in that is something that does not help you. Okay, we know for a fact, given the 400,000 answers we looked into, that the quality of the answer helps you, especially for the rules that get adopted. Okay, so if the expertise of so many different people is going to help you write a better comment letter, then sure, hire them, hire us. But that's what we can say given the data that we have.
And forgive me if I'm overstating the conclusions in your paper, but also it seems like a good strategy, this isn't Tom's question, who to hire, but a good strategy is to make sure you're acting in concert with other interested parties. So if you're a corporation, maybe you're talking to similarly situated corporations, maybe you're talking to groups like the Chamber of Commerce or some groups that represent the interests of corporations, because it did come through that coordinated action seemed to be helpful at the proposal and adoption stages.
Very much, because if you have, say, retail investors, if 50% of them want something and the other 50% want something else, it is impossible for the commission to rule and please everyone.
Right.
Right. So if everything's in accordance and speak the same language, it's easier to have your preferences reflected in rules.
Right. Well, maybe final question. So looking forward, your paper's not complete, although it looks pretty near final to me, but where do you want to take the paper? Where do you think you'll look next? What's on your horizon?
And we're looking more into the relationship between staff, and because the characteristics of long-term employees on SEC and how these characteristics get reflected on the choice of rules, on who gets assigned to what, and what's the determinants of that. We have at least 5 different directions we are exploring right now, but as in any research, if we were sure they were pen out results or we find something, we wouldn't have to do them. We just document them. Right. So we hopefully hope to one day come back here with even more results about this and give you your comments again on those.
Good, great. Well, please do. We'll check back in with you. Maybe we'll take up Tom's question and see how this SEC chair does in rulemaking. In the meantime, thank you both, Gabriel and Gabriel, for coming on SEC Roundup. Thank you, Tom, as always, for co-hosting. For everybody else, if you want more information about ICANN, go to icanlaw.org, and we'll see you on the next SEC Roundup. Thanks.